today's topic, as I mentioned, is about Posture Lab and running a Posture Lab in your yoga teacher training. So every training needs a way to teach your yoga teacher trainees the details about postures that they're going to be teaching. The best way to do that is with a repeatable framework from which they can build on their knowledge of the postures. Really, a method for teaching them the details about their posture, helping them move from the mindset of being a student in your class to a teacher. And so you need to give them a way to be able to learn more details about the postures, everything from modifications to verbal cues. So the wide variety of things they need to learn about some specific postures that they'll be teaching. Why you need this? So in my training, the Posture Lab is one of the foundational pieces of my training. We talk about the postures in a specific framework, and this framework helps the trainees start to more smartly sequence their classes. They can really compare and contrast and get a better feel for why certain postures go in certain places when they start to teach classes. Another reason for this framework is for things like modifications, contraindications, when students are given a specific framework from which they can compare and contrast different postures, it helps them as they move into perhaps more detailed postures, as they gain more experience as teachers. It gives them a place to understand the modifications a little bit better. They can use some of the information that you share with them in yoga teacher training as they go through and create or have modifications for more in-depth postures. It gives them a framework from which to start thinking about these postures more as a teacher, and instead of just a student and from their own perspective. So what do you need to run a Posture Lab? So to run your Posture Lab, you need just a few things. First of those things is your list of postures. Now, this may vary in your training depending on the style of yoga that you are training on. So in my training, we focus on vinyasa. And so, of course, the sun salutations are in there, and we cover those in depth. And then a variety of other postures, right? You've got standing, you've got balancing postures, seated postures, inversions, a wide variety of postures. So you need to come up with a list of postures. In my training, we cover 50 postures in detail. And so your training may be more postures, maybe less postures. Maybe you're going to start with 50 postures and see in your first few trainings how that number works for you and for your trainees. I wanted to talk a little bit about inversions. So in that group of postures, in my 200-hour yoga teacher training, we stick with very simple inversions. And I really believe that as new teachers, it's a good recommendation to make because, as we all know, inversions require a little bit more experience perhaps. However, there are some that you can cover with your 200-hour trainees that they can feel comfortable starting to introduce in their classes. A couple of them, legs up the wall. I love that posture. It's not, full inversion with the upper body, but it is a wonderful inversion for beginning teachers to teach, right? They get some practice in giving the cues for inversions, and yet it's one of the safest, right, inversions that they can teach on. We do shoulder stand. Again, there are props and some things you can train on for your trainees how to teach shoulder stand in their own classes. We do start to cover headstand as well. This one we talk about a lot as far as whether or not classes that they're teaching can be introduced to headstand as a posture to teach. So I know a lot of times I've had trainees come into my class and they're, oh, we're going to learn all about handstand and we're going to be able to teach handstand and these kinds of things. And as a 200-hour course, you're not going to get to everything. And inversions are something that really require a little more experience as a teacher. Maybe working one-on-one with a mentor as they gain teaching experience to really get the feel for how to teach those safely and to learn when to introduce them in class. Certainly a conversation you can have in your 200-hour, but I tend to stick to the more basic inversions in the 200-hour yoga teacher training. Okay, so you need your list of postures for sure. Let's see, when to run your posture lab in your yoga teacher training. I say often. I run my trainings on weekends. And so we have a few hours on a Friday evening, and then we go bigger chunks of hours on Saturdays and Sundays. And on those Saturdays and Sundays, we will cover 3 to 5 postures per day. So we spend a good bit of time in any given weekend on posture lab. 3 to 5, it depends on the complexity of the posture, what other things we need to be covering in that particular weekend. But I work to get through 3 to 5 per day on any given weekend. And then when we get through them all, it's nice to be able to go back and review those. And once trainees have a deeper understanding of a variety of postures, typically another set of questions comes up and we can go back and review some of those questions and some of those postures in more detail. So I cover postures right from the start, from very first weekend on, so that trainees get very familiar with looking at postures from a teacher's perspective. And then this next session of mine, I'm experimenting with a bit of a change up, an addition in my format, and that is with Immersion. So in the first few meetings of my training session this time, I'm going to be focusing on immersion. And by immersion, I mean we're going to be focusing on the trainees' practice. Not in addition to asana, we'll be talking about pranayama, meditations, journaling, mudras, some of the philosophy and those practices, but as they relate to the student themselves. And in that immersion, I'm going to bring in the posture lab as it relates to the individual student, into the individual trainee in class. So when we talk about modifications, we will be looking and observing the variety of folks in class, and we'll be talking specifically about modifications they may need to work on as they work their postures, and so that they get a personal feel for the practice at a deeper level, and with a group where we will have in-depth discussions about their own practice and get them familiar with some of those concepts. So we're going to be bringing Posture Lab just a little bit differently in that way. So I hope that helps you. Of course, on my website, I have got materials, workbooks for Posture Lab for both trainers and trainees. That again includes 50 postures. You're welcome to check that out. And I hope that this has helped you if you decide to DIY for your Posture Lab. I'm going to be adding in the comments here after the video's over some specific resources that I used in putting together my Posture Lab, and hopefully if you decide to DIY your Posture Lab materials, they will be of help to you as well. All right, I'm Julie Chavanaugh, Yoga Trainers Workshop and Yoga Trainers Tribe. I hope you enjoyed this version of the live video, and tune in next week and we will be talking yet again about yoga teacher training topics. Have a good one.